I never thought I'd be the type to throw a massive party for something like a wedding anniversary, but here we were, James and I, gearing up to celebrate 15 years together. Our story wasn't one for the fairy tales, but it was ours, filled with ups and downs, laughter, and the occasional shouting match over who forgot to take out the trash. Our anniversary was shaping up to be a bash like no other. We decided on a theme that was a bit out there, think vibrant, loud, and in your face, just like the love we had for each other. I found myself in a pink wedding dress that screamed more bubblegum pop star than blushing bride, while James was practically glowing in a suit so red, you'd think he'd stolen it from a flamenco dancer. "Look at us, Ella," James chuckled as he twirled me around in our living room. "We're a walking Valentine's Day card." I couldn't help but laugh. "Yeah, well, you love it. And you know this dress makes me look good." The doorbell rang, signaling the start of the chaos. Our place was soon filled with over 130 of our closest friends, acquaintances, and a few folks I swear I'd never seen before in my life. The music was loud, the drinks were flowing, and everyone seemed to be having the time of their lives. "Hey, Ella," shouted my friend Liz over the din of the crowd. "I brought someone I want you to meet. This is Tina, she's a model." Tina was striking, with an air about her that screamed I'm used to being the center of attention. I could see why Liz was so eager to introduce us. "Nice to meet you," I said, offering a smile that I hoped didn't look too strained. "The pleasure's all mine," Tina replied, her eyes scanning the room until they landed on James. "And who's this dashing gentleman?" Before I could answer, James slid up beside me, his arm wrapping around my waist. "I'm the lucky guy who gets to call Ella my wife." "And you are?" "Tina," she said, her smile a little too friendly for my liking. I noticed the way James's gaze lingered on her a bit too long, but I brushed it off. Jealousy wasn't a good look on me, and besides, James was just being polite. Right? As the night went on, I found myself watching them from across the room. They were laughing about something, and I felt a twinge of something ugly in my gut. Shaking my head, I turned back to the group I was chatting with, determined not to let it bother me. As the night wound down, James pulled me aside, his eyes sparkling with a mix of excitement and something I couldn't quite place. "Babe, I've been thinking, what if we got ourselves something special for the anniversary? Something big, something like a new car." I raised an eyebrow. "A new car?" "James, you know we've got to be sensible with our spending." He was quick to reassure me. I know, but think about it. It's not just any car. It's a statement, a way to mark our 15 years. Plus, with your photography gigs and my job, we can handle it. What do you say?" After a bit of back and forth, his enthusiasm was infectious, and I found myself nodding in agreement. "Okay, let's do it. But you owe me big time for this," I said, half joking. The weeks after our anniversary bash flew by in a blur of work and routine, but something was off. James's late nights at the office started stacking up like unpaid bills. "Working late again?" I'd ask over the phone, trying not to let the skepticism seep into my voice. "Yeah, babe, you know how it is. End of quarter crunch," he'd respond, his voice a mix of fatigue and something else I couldn't quite pin down. I wanted to believe him, really, I did. But doubt is like a small leak in a dam, ignore it, and before you know it, you're underwater. One evening, as I was putting away laundry, I found a receipt in the pocket of James's jacket. It was for a pair of earrings, the kind that you don't buy on a whim unless you're feeling particularly generous or guilty. My heart sank, but I shoved the receipt into my pocket, deciding to confront James about it later. When he finally came home, the clock had already given up on waiting and settled into the early hours of the morning. I was sitting at the kitchen table, the receipt lying between us like a challenge. "Care to explain this?" I asked, my voice steady, but my hands betraying me with their tremble. James looked at the receipt, then at me, his expression a mix of confusion and alarm. "Oh, that. It's, a surprise for you." "Yeah, a surprise," he stammered, his usual smooth talk failing him. "A surprise?" I echoed, the word tasting bitter. "And you thought the best way to surprise me was to leave the receipt where I'd find it?" He ran a hand through his hair, a sign I'd come to recognize as him gearing up to smooth things over. Babe, I wanted to get you something special, you know? To make up for all the late nights. I was gonna surprise you this weekend. I wanted to melt, to let his words wash over me and erase the doubt. But the nagging voice in my head wasn't having it. James, you think a pair of earrings can make up for the fact that you're practically a ghost around here? What's really going on? James sighed, the weight of the conversation pulling him down into the chair opposite me. Ella, I swear, there's nothing going on. Work's just been a nightmare, and I thought a nice gift would show you how much I appreciate you sticking by me. I studied him, searching his face for the truth. Part of me screamed to dive into the fight, to push until the dam broke, but another part, the part that remembered all the years of love and laughter, urged caution. Okay, James. I'll let it go. But just know, I'm not blind. If there's something you're not telling me, it's gonna come out sooner or later. James reached across the table, taking my hands in his. There's nothing, Ella. I promise. Just work being a pain in the ass. And you're right, I could have thought the surprise through a bit better. The next day, I found myself watching James, looking for signs that I'd either been right to worry or foolish to doubt. He was his usual self, affectionate and slightly annoying in the way that had first drawn me to him. But every time his phone buzzed or he laughed a little too loudly at a text, I felt that twinge of doubt again. Who's that keeping you so entertained? I asked during dinner, trying to keep my tone light and teasing. Just some guy from work. You know, office banter, James replied, his smile not quite reaching his eyes. Must be some banter, I muttered, pushing my food around my plate. James put his phone down, his face serious. Ella, look at me. I love you. You're the only one. These late nights, the stress, it's all for us. For our future. Can you just trust me on this? I looked into his eyes, searching for the reassurance I so desperately needed. I'm trying, James. I really am. But it's hard when it feels like you're miles away even when you're right here. Coming home to an empty house wasn't new, James's late returns had set a precedent. But this silence was different, oppressive, echoing off the walls with a cold finality that sent a chill down my spine. The usual clutter of James's daily life was gone. His shoes weren't tossed haphazardly by the door, his coat wasn't draped over the chair, and the faint scent of his cologne had vanished into thin air. Panic set in, a gnawing, relentless beast that clawed at my chest. I called his phone, each ring slicing a bit deeper into my hope. Then he picked up, and his voice, once the sound of comfort, was now a harbinger of dread. James, where the hell are you? What's going on? I demanded, my voice a mix of fear and anger. Ella, he began, his tone casual, almost nonchalant. I'm glad you called. Saves me the trouble of explaining later. Explaining what? My heart raced, each beat a loud drum against my ribcage. I'm leaving, Ella. I've left, actually. Do you remember Tina? I fell in love with her like a boy. It's better this way. His words were a punch to the gut, leaving me gasping for air. Better? You think destroying our life is better? He sighed, a sound of irritation rather than remorse. Don't make this harder than it needs to be, Ella. It's done. I'm with her now. She's pregnant. Pregnant? The world tilted, a sickening spin that had me reaching for the back of a chair. And you think that justifies this? What about us, James? What about everything we've built together? Ella, we've drifted apart. You know it as well as I do. This is just the final step. I've moved on. You should too. His coldness was a blade, each word twisting deeper. And what about our debts of $700,000? The car? The house? You're just going to leave me with all that? There was a pause, a moment of silence that spoke volumes. I took the car. Consider it a parting gift. As for the rest, well, you'll figure it out. You always do. A parting gift? I echoed, incredulity painting my words. You cheat, you leave, and you steal from me, and that's your idea of a gift? Look, Ella, I didn't answer you to argue. Just, take care of the paperwork, will you? Make it easy for both of us. The callousness in his voice was the final straw. Easy? You want easy, James? There's nothing easy about betrayal. You'll get what's coming to you, I promise that. He laughed, a sound so foreign and cruel. Always the dramatic one, Ella. Take care of yourself. Goodbye. The line went dead, a stark end to 15 years of love, laughter, and shared dreams. I stood there, phone in hand, a storm of emotions raging within. Anger, betrayal, sorrow, they all melded into a fierce resolve. After James dropped that bomb on me and vanished, leaving nothing but his shadow and a pile of broken promises, I found myself staring at the divorce papers he left behind. They were just sitting there on the kitchen table, as if mocking me. With a heavy heart and hands that couldn't stop shaking, I signed them. Took those papers to court like I was delivering my own heart in a box. That betrayal, it did something to me. I couldn't work, couldn't think straight. All I did was sit around, trapped in my own head with thoughts that ran in circles like rats in a maze. It was like my body just gave up on me, couldn't handle the stress of it all. Before I knew it, I was knocked flat with some serious illness. Needed surgery and everything. Thank the stars for insurance, 'cause it covered everything. Without it, I'd have been sunk deeper into a hole I couldn't claw out of. My folks, bless them, they didn't know at first. But when they found out, they came rushing over. Didn't matter that we hadn't been talking much or that they had their own pile of troubles. They just showed up. My mom and dad, taking turns caring for me, making sure I ate something, and keeping the house from falling apart around me. When they found out what James had done, the air got thick with anger and worry. But they were there for me, through and through. Can't believe that snake, my dad muttered one day, his voice low but filled with a fury I hadn't heard in years. Leaving you like this, in such a mess. My mom, always the softer one, would just hold me close. We're here, baby. We're gonna get through this together, she'd say, her words a balm on my broken heart. I was drowning in gratitude for them. Without their help, I don't know how I would have made it. Slowly, with their support, I started pulling myself out of that pit of despair. Started feeling bits and pieces of myself knitting back together. It wasn't easy, getting back to work. First day back, I remember standing outside, my hand on the door, taking deep breaths like I was about to dive underwater. You can do this, I whispered to myself, over and over, like a mantra. Inside, it was like stepping into a different world. The familiar faces, the smell of coffee in the air, it was all the same, but I felt like I was seeing it from the other side of a glass wall. You good, Ella? One of my coworkers asked, eyeing me with a mix of concern and curiosity. Yeah, just getting back into the swing of things, I replied, forcing a smile that felt like it cost me everything. But day by day, it got a bit easier. The routine of work, the focus it demanded, it gave me something else to think about besides James and the colossal mess he left behind. My parents, they were my rock, my safe harbor in the storm. They saved me, in more ways than one. Just when I thought things couldn't get any crazier, Liz, yeah, the same one who unknowingly threw my life into a tailspin by bringing Tina around, gave me a buzz one lazy afternoon. Ella, you won't believe what I just found out, Liz blurted out, barely letting me get a hello in. I braced myself, not sure I was in the mood for more surprises. What's up, Liz? What did you find out now? That model, Tina? She was already pregnant when she met James at our party. James got played, big time. Liz's voice was a mix of shock and, oddly, a hint of satisfaction. I paused, letting the news sink in. A part of me, the part that was still nursing a broken heart and a bruised ego, couldn't help but feel a twinge of satisfaction. So, he left me for a lie? Can't say I'm sad to hear that. Right? But listen, Ella, this is your chance. You need to fight back, get what's yours. Have you thought about talking to a lawyer? Liz's tone turned serious. All business now. I hadn't, not really. The thought of diving into legal battles on top of everything else felt overwhelming. But Liz had a point. I guess it's worth a shot. I'll look into it, thanks, Liz. Finding a lawyer felt like stepping into another world. But I lucked out, finding one who didn't just see me as another case number. So, you're telling me the car, the one James took off in, it's in your name? The lawyer asked, his eyebrows raised in what I read as a good sign. Yeah, everything's in my name. The house, the car. I never thought he'd just bail on me like this. I explained, the reality of my situation settling in. The lawyer nodded, scribbling some notes. Good. That makes things a lot simpler. You have every right to that car, and the house. We can definitely work with this. But it wasn't enough to know I'd won. As I sat there, the reality of my situation sinking in, a plan began to take shape. James thought he could upend my life and ride off into the sunset with his mistress and my car. I don't think so. The day I walked into the police station, my heart was racing, but my resolve was ironclad. I never thought I'd file a report against James, but here I was, reporting the car he stole, the car that legally belonged to me. It felt surreal, like a scene from a movie I never wanted to star in. Yet, there was a sense of righteousness in taking this step, a declaration that I wasn't going to be a victim of his selfishness any longer. Weeks passed in a blur after that. I found solace in my work and the support of my friends and family, slowly rebuilding the life James had tried to tear down. Then, out of the blue, my phone rang. Seeing James's name flash on the screen sent a jolt of surprise through me. Ella, please, you have to help me. James's voice was frantic, a stark contrast to the cool detachment he'd shown during our last conversation. Help you? I echoed, my voice cold. Why on earth would I do that? I've been arrested, Ella. For stealing the car. Your car. They're saying it's Grand Theft Auto. You have to withdraw your claim. Please, I'm begging you. He pleaded, desperation seeping through every word. The news hit me with a mix of shock and, I'll admit, a tinge of satisfaction. You want me to bail you out? After everything you've done? I asked, incredulous. Ella, I'm sorry. I know I messed up, but this is serious. I could go to jail, he said, his voice breaking. That's the point, James. Actions have consequences. You chose to leave, to steal from me, and now you face the music. I replied, my decision firm. There was a pause, and I could almost hear him scrambling for words. Ella, please. I didn't think it would come to this. That's always been your problem, James. You never think things through, I said, the months of frustration and heartache boiling down to this moment of clarity. Before I hung up, there was one more thing I needed him to know. Oh, and James? Your precious Tina was already pregnant at our anniversary. Not with your child, but nice try. You played yourself. Silence. The kind that screams louder than words ever could. I knew I had him. The realization, the truth of his situation and the lies he'd been living, finally hitting home. James tried to speak, to respond, but nothing came out. I didn't need to hear his excuses or his apologies anymore. I had said my piece. The courtroom was chilly, a stark contrast to the heat of the emotions bubbling inside me. I sat there, back straight, heart pounding, as the judge flipped through the documents laid out before him. James sat across the room, his lawyer whispering in his ear, but the cocky assurance he once carried like a cloak had vanished. Now, he looked smaller somehow, diminished. Mrs. Carter, you brought forth charges of theft against Mr. James Carter, alleging he unlawfully took possession of a vehicle registered in your name, is that correct? The judge asked, his voice carrying through the silent courtroom. Yes, Your Honor. That's correct, I replied, my voice steady, despite the tremor I felt inside. James's lawyer stood up, a sleek man with a too-sharp suit and a too-smooth voice. Your Honor, Mr. Carter maintains that this was a misunderstanding. The vehicle in question was a family asset, and he believed he had every right to its use. The judge nodded, seemingly unimpressed. Mr. Carter, do you have any documents to prove your claim to the vehicle? James shifted uncomfortably in his seat. No, Your Honor. But nothing. I cut in before I could stop myself. The car was mine. Registered in my name, paid for with my money. He took it without my consent. That's theft. The room went quiet. The judge looked at me, then at James, his gaze lingering. It seems clear to me that Mrs. Carter has provided sufficient evidence to support her claim. Mr. Carter, your actions constitute theft. You unlawfully took something that didn't belong to you. James's lawyer tried to interject, but the judge raised his hand, silencing him. I'm ruling in favor of Mrs. Carter. Mr. Carter, you are to return the vehicle immediately to Ms. Foster and compensate for any damages incurred during this period. Furthermore, you will pay a fine for the unlawful possession of the vehicle. James looked like he'd been slapped. He turned to me, his eyes pleading. Ella, please. I shook my head, cutting him off. Justice, James. That's all I wanted. You can't just take what you want without consequences. The judge banged his gavel, marking the end of the proceedings. Court is adjourned. As I walked out of the courtroom, a weight lifted off my shoulders. It wasn't just about the car or the money. It was about standing up for myself, about showing James, and maybe even myself, that I wasn't someone who could be walked over. I had fought for my rights, and I had won. I turned my phone on, messages and calls flooding in. Friends, family, even co-workers who'd heard about the trial were reaching out, their words a mix of congratulations and relief. I smiled, typing out replies, feeling a sense of community and support I hadn't realized was there. Justice served, huh? Liz's text popped up, a smiley face at the end. Yeah, justice served, I replied, a smile spreading across my face. After everything settled down from the trial, my life took a turn I never expected. It was like I finally woke up from a long, bad dream and decided I wasn't going to spend one more minute stuck in the past. I let go of all the pain and anger that James had caused me. It wasn't easy, but day by day, I felt lighter, more myself. I heard through the grapevine that James's life took a nosedive after the trial. His reputation was shot, and he got canned from his job. Turns out, word gets around fast, and no one wanted to hire a guy known for pulling the kind of stunt he did. Last I heard, he and that mistress of his called it quits. Karma's a real thing, I guess. One day, Liz dropped by my new place, her eyes wide as she took in the cozy setup. This is nice, Ella. Really nice. I smiled, handing her a cup of coffee. Thanks. Sold the old apartment and the car. Paid off every last cent of that loan. It's like I'm starting fresh, you know? Liz nodded, sipping her coffee. And the mortgage? Way more manageable. Got myself a sweet deal on this place. It's smaller but just what I need. I took a deep breath, feeling genuinely content for the first time in ages. So, what's next for you? Liz asked, a curious glint in her eyes. I leaned back, a grin spreading across my face. Travel. I've got a list of places I want to see, and experiences I want to, well, experience. Life's too short to stay put. Liz laughed, clinking her cup against mine. That's the spirit. You deserve all the adventure and happiness in the world, Ella. And I did travel. I saw beaches with sand so white it hurt your eyes, cities buzzing with life and lights, mountains that touched the sky, and forests so quiet you could hear your own heartbeat. Each place I visited, I left a piece of the old me behind and found a bit of the new me waiting. During my travels, I'd often chat with fellow travelers, sharing stories and laughs. One evening, sitting around a fire on a beach somewhere I never thought I'd find myself, a guy with a kind smile and eyes full of stories asked me, "What's the biggest thing you've learned from all your travels?" I thought about it, the fire crackling, the waves whispering secrets to the shore. I learned that no matter how hard things get, there's always a way out, a path to something better. You just gotta be brave enough to take the first step. He nodded. Sounds like you've been through a lot. I smiled, the stars reflecting in my eyes. Yeah, but look at me now. Traveling the world, living my best life. Turns out, the toughest times really do lead to the best beginnings.